think people are really gonna watch this?
They ain't got nothing else to do.
Right?
Word.
I ain't going on social media talking shit about TDS Radio. I know that much.
My man, Coach Block.
What's up, cuz? How we living?
You're rocking with TDS Radio.
Get it, Kim. All right. She got a vision, and she wants us to execute this vision.
Ooh, man. That's what TDS is about today.
Ken and Kim are the two dopest siblings that I know.
All right, man. You ready?
Am I ready? Are they ready? What's up? It's your man, Coach Block, one half of TDS Radio. And I know nobody was expecting the Sibs to be out today, but you know what? There was an important interview that needed to come out and a conversation that needed to be had based upon the climate of what we're in and what we are seeing, especially here in North Carolina with some of our minority fellows that are going through some tragic times. And, you know, we don't want to be numb. We want to definitely be sensitive to the conversation and the situation that's going on. And we want to make sure that there are just some dialogues going on about what we're seeing. We have youth being affected. We have the elderly being affected. We have businesses being affected. There's a lot going on right now. And depending on what side of the lens you're on, depends on the narrative that you receive and what you understand. And right now, specifically myself, I'm having a real hard time about what I see. I have a hard time about some of our carrying on as a community, you know, depending on what side of the fence you're on, either pro or against. And it for me, I'm just having some hard times. I would love to hear how others are handling what we are visualizing. I would also like to know anyone who's out there when you watch this, anyone who's out there that we can possibly help. Also, because, you know, of course, I'm talking about the ICE situation, but there's other situations going on too. We have the holidays that are rapidly approaching. They're right on top of us. If there are any families who are out there in need, once again, it's info@tdsradio.com. Is 1000% discreet. We will not be the ones that's putting out the videos talking about how we help families or anything like that, but just shoot us an email if there's a family that we can assist or do anything for over this holiday time. We definitely want to make sure we do our part. So with that being said, there's some things that before we have our guest that I would just like to just talk about just checking in. How are you all doing out there? I mean, holidays are always tough for myself and for SoFab, Kim, my sister. And usually the holidays are tough because it's just a time when we do a lot of reflecting. We lost our mom in 2022. And so the holidays have never, and I mean never, felt the same since losing such an intricate part of your life. That's a piece that, you know, you just don't have back. And I know there's other people who suffer during the holidays where you see it's a joyous time for some, but in your own personal world, in your personal bubble, you're like, man, it's not so joyous. So if that is the case, once again, reach out to us, let us know what you got going on, and if there's resources or if there's ways that we can connect, we would love to connect, because, you know, the goal through the holidays is to push through. A lot of people get caught in the hoop ha and what you see on the commercials and all the snow and all, but it's not like that for everybody. So one of the things my mom used to say is that everybody deserves a happy holiday. So please make sure you reach out, talk to somebody. If there's nobody to talk to, you can always reach out to TDS Radio. Our tagline is our voice, our culture, even if it's just to vent, to get it out, because there's just so many things going on at one period of time. And at some point, you just want to press pause, man. Can we just take a break? Can we just breathe a little bit? And that goes from work, that goes from home, that goes from friendships, everybody's exhausted, man. Like it's just a time right now where you just see a lot of anguish. And I'm not saying that it's just all gloom and doom, But in the back of our minds, if some of us are suffering, then all of us are suffering because we're connected somehow, some way to what you see. Yesterday, I was a part of a lockdown inside of Riverside High School. While the lockdown's going on, you had ICE who also popped up. I don't know if the two was related. What it was said is that there was a gun inside the building, and students were locked down for an extra hour and some change after school was over. So the bell was about to ring. We got a notice that the school was going on lockdown, and we were on lockdown until from 4 till roughly about 5:15, 5:30. And you had parents panicking. You had helicopters flying over the school. You had, there was, because you're in the school building, the communication is tough as far as cell service and networks. People weren't able to get in contact with anything. You see parents crying and students just trying to get the heck out of there. Everything was tough, yo. And I had a short circuit. Personally, myself, it had gotten to the point where I just said, I can't take any more of this. The day before that, ICE was in my neighborhood, right? Literally right down the street, right down the corner. And so, there's businesses that we know, business owners in our community where there are a couple families here that own businesses to the front and back of my home. We haven't even seen them. Usually their trucks are rolling at 4:30 a.m. in the morning going to work. It's silent. You don't hear their trucks rolling. You don't see their families. You don't see their children. And for me, that bothers me. I don't know. There's a human side of me that doesn't sit well. And I know things personally in my life have to continue to go on. But for a damn minute, I think things can be paused just so you can gather yourself and be human for a damn minute, because what we're working with or what we're having to do is not as important as what's going on with other people's lives that are being drastically changed immediately. Not even overnight, immediately upon arrival. It's just so much bullshit. I'll just say it what it is. It's just so much bullshit going on, man. And so our chat session, if you're watching this now, if you're watching this later, is always open. Fill that chat up and just talk it, man. Just get it out and let us be a safe place for you to vent. And so the reason why this interview had to happen today is because one of my students that I work with, one of my college crew, he said, "Hey, man, I know this guy, you might want to talk to him." I said, "I might want to talk to him. Tell me about him." He said, "Well, he was our class president at Central. He's done a lot of great things." And when we're talking about democracy, which is a part of what I work with the young students, a magazine called Shaboka, which stands for I Exist for You. One of the things that we do is or one of our article sections is about democracy because of the election that was just held in Durham, and then also just basic what they see and how their voice needs to be heard in some of the decision making that happens in politics. So when that had happened, DJ lined it up. DJ said, "Coach, you got to get this guy on, and as soon as you can." So we did. So let me give you a biography of our next guest here. Devin Freeman is a recent graduate of North Carolina Central University who studied political science. He's passionate about understanding the intersections of law and public policy. He has experience in these related fields by interning for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, the U.S. House of Representatives, and the NC Chamber, and more. Devin's goal is to make marginalized people civically active so that they can become civically engaged in building political power and communities, or for our communities. On campus, Devin served as the class president, NAACP, and see, that's Coach Block that went off, NAACP president, and Kamala Harris Surrogate. He has won several awards, such as the Public Policy and International Affairs, Law and Public Policy Fellowship, Next Gen Leader, White House Historical Associate Fellowship, Harvard PPLC Fellowship, and more. But recently, Devin has published children's books called Building a Better Block with Brandon. That's dope. Which empowers children to be self-aware and resolve-oriented. Devin Freeman has had several notable speaking engagements, most prominently introducing former Vice President Kamala Harris at the 56th Annual NAACP Image Awards. Lastly, Devin Freeman's plans to commission as an officer in the Army Reserves, branching intelligence, as well as he has been accepted to the Master of Public Administration at Cornell Brooks School with full tuition. That is huge. And will attend this upcoming fall of 2025 and plans to receive a Juris Doctorate at Yale, man, knocking it out the box, and then shortly enter into politics. And he is also from Kernersville, North Carolina. So please welcome our guest. That is a phenomenal young man. I got to ask how old he is with all these accolades, but Devin Freeman, how are you doing, good sir?
I'm good, man. How you doing? How's life?
Oh, man, life is lifing. Life is life. I'm on this side of the ground, so that's the start, right?
It is the start, man. Doing the good work of the people. That's it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, thank you. I'm proud of you. Well, reading that bio, that was the first time I got a chance to go through the whole thing. That's why I was kind of stumbling over, because I'm reading ahead like, man, this brother has done so much. I don't even know specifically where to start. So tell the people just a little bit about you and just where we should start with your bio, because there's so much. Just pick a place and we'll go in.
Man, you honor me too much, bro. I appreciate it. Again, everybody, my name is Devin Freeman. I'm from Kernersville, North Carolina. As you heard, I was actually born in Philly, though. So Southside Philly.
I'm born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Hey, let them know. Let them know. Hey, again, I'm always gonna be an Eagles fan, but hey, we love the Steelers, though. It's all good.
Likewise.
All love. And so when I was 5, moved down to Kernersville, North Carolina with my parents. My mom, she's a healthcare professional, and she also teaches at A&T. And my dad, he works in HR and construction. And then I got a younger brother. He's currently at the Naval Academy. He's in his second year. And so I say that because my family has always raised me to be like not only family oriented, but also community oriented, and seeing what my parents did in the community. Now, also my dad, growing up, he was also like my football coach and all these other things. And so like seeing that and then seeing what my mom made me want to go into medicine and do things like that. Because at my old high school, I went to Atkins, that was in Winston. And that got me intrigued into like, what could I do in medicine? And then I switched because back in like 2018, I led a March for Our Lives movement. And from there, it made me kind of realize like, how can I bridge the gap between like medicine and people? Because what I was seeing was that many Americans don't have affordable health care. And so what does that look like if I'm giving like emergency care and then I'm saving one life at a time on the operating table, but when they come out, they're leaving with so much medical debt, or people that can't even afford those type of services. So when I'm thinking about those things, it made me realize like, what can I do with policy and law? And I was fortunate enough to get a full tuition to go to West Point. So I went to United States Military Academy. So I did that. I went to, and then they made cuts. So I was there for 2 years from 2019, 2021. Then I came to NCCU. And so while being at North Carolina Central University, I was like, I'm glad to be home. And NCCU, as you know, is in Durham. And again, go Bull City, go Eagles always. And I began to grow. Got there in 2021. I just graduated this past May, but I've had such a good time just for being around just my people, but then also more importantly, just having the experience that you really can't get at anywhere else. You know, I mean, where I got there, got into community organizing. That's how I worked in the NAACP, and then became class president for a couple of years. But what helped me, I was able to lead and build more unity between the HBCUs in North Carolina, because we're able to send and do so many different marches, going to from the U.S. Supreme Court. So we challenged student debt issues. We also challenged like affirmative action. And then from there, I started transitioning to have like more opportunities in policy. So then I began to work in Congress. And then I was there. I don't know if you remember when like the Roe versus Wade was going on, as well as when like the January 6th hearings. So I was there. I sat at the hearings. I was working for Congresswoman Adams. Then from there, she liked me. And so she put me on her campaign team that fall semester after the summer. And it was neat. I got to help her, and then also got to help with, I don't know if you remember Sherry Beasley. Sherry Beasley, she started the campaign too. So I also was helping on both campaign teams, and I opened up for Sherry Beasley. And then from there, it was neat because I got to then go do fellowships in Cali. So doing just building out my portfolio on education, housing, and then also on environment. And then from there, I started coming back to Central, and then I started working on like more political stuff. So then working on like being in the Democrats and being the precinct chair and things of that. So I did that for a whole year, and then Kamala Harris, she invited me to the White House and things of that. So that was pretty neat, and that's how I got more involved on like the national level.
That's
and
huge.
Then, it was cool. I was there. I don't know if you remember when they did like the February Black History Month, and they had like all the HBCU leaders.
Yeah.
And so I was there for the second one that they did. So I was there for that, and it was neat going to the White House, then going to her house, the Naval Observatory. And then after that, I went to Africa, study abroad. So that's gave me more of a understanding of just overall how can I be a global citizen. So I went.
What part of Africa did you go to?
I went to Tanzania and Kenya.
Okay.
Yeah, I was there every 2 months. I was there for and then it was neat. Got to go on the safaris, got to live with the people, and then also go to the resorts, and also like went to University of Dar es Salaam and studied there alongside the students, and then came back, got malaria, got sick.
Okay.
Yeah, that was crazy. It was a crazy time. And then I went to the DNC. I became a delegate to the DNC. And then once I came back from that, they asked me to be a part of the campaign, be a youth surrogate. So I was one of the only like youth surrogates across America, and then particularly within North Carolina. So from September all the way to November, I was speaking for the campaign. So I would either be doing like press releases. I was either on at rallies, open up at rallies, or being on the radio. And so I was doing that, and then that's how I got to open up for Tim Walz, Bill Clinton, also Governor Westmore. And then later, going into that spring semester, I got to open up for Kamala Harris at the NAACP Image Awards. And then now I'm here now at Cornell. This is my first semester. So
congratulations.
Appreciate you.
So let me ask you this, man. With this type of traveling and all that, man, how old are you?
I just turned 24. Yeah.
That's what's up, man. Grinding. I appreciate our youth being in these spaces and being a voice. And that actually takes me to one of my points that I want to start with, because this interview was initially initiated by me working with, like I said earlier in the podcast, with students. So where can some of the high school students and the college students begin to express themselves politically so that they're heard? One thing that Kimberly and I noticed along the campaign trail for the council and mayor this season that just passed was they wanted to be heard, but didn't know how to be heard or where to express themselves. It felt as though they did not have a voice. So for the youth, how do they establish themselves in the political frontier?
That's a great question. So one of the ways I started back in high school, I didn't mention this, but I also was a poll worker. So what a poll worker is, essentially you can have a paid opportunity to really man the polls, the stations, which is at the polling center where you're voting at, right? And so that's one of the ways, and you can get to see the intricacies of just like, how does the polling stations work, and then how they go about reporting the vote and things of that. That's one of the ways I got to learn like intimately how that system works. Now, if you want to be on more of the political side of things, what you can do is, one, show up to city town meetings, that city hall meetings. That by itself is huge, because what you start to do is you start to see how the process actually unfolds. And then after the session ends or before the session starts, you go and you actually speak to the city council members or the mayor and have one-on-one conversations. And from there, you start to build like rapport. And then what you can also start doing, if you're also in high school, I used to be student body president of my old high school. And what we also do, we work with like local elected officials, and also just bring them to class and things like that. And I had a really good high school teacher. He was a civics teacher. His name's Mr. Arzello, and he's the one that got me involved and got me some of the opportunities in high school. And that's one of the ways I always tell people is like, oftentimes you're more connected to these people than you realize. Yeah, it's more so choosing the right type of approach that best like benefits you and getting you to what you need. And that's why I always try to tell people is that there's always something to do. It's about finding like what's best for you. So some of the things that I named out, those are ways you can do it. But then also you can be on the campaign side of things. And that's something that, doing that in high school can also give you a major leg up. And then another thing too, while I was working in Congress, it was for the first time seeing like high school students actually like working in Congress, and typically that's something that you would have to wait all the way till like you're in college or even after college. But seeing that real time that you could be in high school and actually work in Congress and get an internship. And another thing, a resource that I'll tell people is that the governor's office, you can also be a page in the governor's office, or you can also be a page for the General Assembly. So there's a lot of resources out there. It's just more so about being plugged in and having the conversation with yourself of like, what is it that you want and what type of experience you want? Because that, depending on which route you take, will give you a different experience compared to another. So again, I always tell our youth is that, we are the change. We're not just the change makers for tomorrow. We are the change makers for the present. And if we can understand that and contextualize that, then we'll understand that and help other people understand that, hey, they're hearing our voice and our voice matters.
Okay. Great answer. I want to be, excuse me, I want to be D Wade and throw you this and you dunk it like LeBron James. Your goal is to make marginalized people civically active. That's what you want to do. And what I would like to know is, what's the gap between I care, I'm actually doing something, and where do people get stuck with that? Because my friend and I literally just had, a drop down argument, and it's not like, it's more of a debate because we don't argue like that, but it's just, there's a space between I care and then I'm doing something, because people care and then they shut their door and they act like the world outside doesn't exist. But then also there's people who are like, I need to actively do something. What are those two spaces? How do you bridge the gap?
No, that's a really good question. And I bet that was probably a very good debate you all were having.
Yeah.
Say this, so my whole goal has always been, how do I make people civically aware so that they're civically engaged? Because I believe with education, I always believe education is the keys for success. So when you help educate people, the education that they receive and how they internalize it for themselves helps them make them more aware of their reality. And when they could do that, you're giving them the tools they need so that they can use that key, use that tool so that they can open their own doors for themselves. So how I always look at it is, if we understand that we can, and if you look at the community there throughout time, there's always been the few that led the many. So when we look at that, we have to understand that, what does that look like to create more leaders? So rather than just a few, we're helping the many not only be followers, but be leaders. So that's something that I saw was just like, when growing up, was that a lot of people felt like they don't know, and all these things, in which to some degree you cannot, disregard people's feelings. But then it gets to a point, it's just like, what can I do to bridge that gap? And so that's why I came to do work, because it's like, we care so much, we could give thoughts, feelings, and sympathies, but what's actually the real work into it? And so how I judge my work is more so, how can I help educate, but then also what are some day-to-day things I could do? And that's something that I started at Central, because I saw one of the main issues on campus was that you had a lot of people, they wanted to find ways of, how can I get involved on campus? How can I do things? And so what I started to do was help engage students of like, these aren't just the clubs you can do, but these are the ways you engage in community service. So first, starting on like community service events and things like that. But then what I started to see next was the issue of like, you have a lot of students at Central that don't view themselves as the overall Durham community. They view like Central as just, this is just my 24/7, and then helping them get more engaged in Durham itself. And the reason why a lot of students do not vote at that voting precinct, is why voting engagement be low at times, is because they're registered to vote back at home, or they're not registered to vote at all. So now you're trying to bridge that gap of like, how can I make people not only understand the ballot, but also understand the reasoning on why you should vote in the first place? Because you can't, this whole notion of, oh, this is the history, this is the past, and so you should vote because your ancestors did and things like that. We get that. But especially when we talk about our age and things like that, we have to give people more grace in regards to like, don't just vote because of the history, but vote for yourself because you're trying to help your next kids and also your grandkids. And
So
then
you
also,
actually you actually took my next question. So I think you're about to go into it. So you already dunked that one. So let me throw you another one, because in the minority community, and even with the youth, and I'm 44, so I could say college is youth. My daughter is your age. So a lot of times people feel like politics is something that happens to them, yet not with them or for them. So from your experience, what is a concrete way to flip that mindset that politics did this to me or politics does this to us versus it can do this for me or it can work with me in this way? How do we change that narrative? I think you were going down that lane, so I just wanted to throw that question in.
No, that's a good question too, and it's a fair question because again, you can't desensitize people's feelings because when we talk about it, we've seen just how people see the nasty side of politics. I feel like politics is over people when people should be over politics. We have to put people first instead of the political nature of things. But what happens is that I feel like people get lost in all of this. And it's in a sense, how is it that we help people within the political process? Because we live in a participatory democracy. So, and there's that old saying of if you don't do politics, politics will do you.
Right.
That also similar verbiage of if you're not at the table, it means you're on the menu.
Right.
So helping and shift people's understanding of power and the dynamics of power itself. So knowing, and if you look at all the movements, change always happened when a collective group of people got together and advocated so that their rights mattered and that they would get the things that they're fighting for. When we look at any of the civil rights things that they did, it was so strategic in nature of, yes, we're going to advocate for this, but at the same breath too, we're going to make sure we're going to be at the tables of decision so that we can get this push across the board. So, and I always try to tell people is that understanding history so you can contextualize your present, that's how you move boldly in the future. So I always try to tell the youth is that you have more power than you realize. It's about how you utilize your power so that your voice doesn't get lost and you feel that your power, that you don't have power, because that's what these systems, these oppressive systems, not only within the US, but also in general, that is what it's meant to do, so that if they can belittle you and think you don't have power, you'll never rise above. Which the reason why they do that is because they want you scared. They want you to be in fear. They want you to not know, because if you don't know, you're not aware and you'll never try to begin to know. So again, it goes back to the whole education piece. If we can educate a group of people on a cause and on a mission and keep them fortified and only in mind, body, and in soul, we're unstoppable.
So let me ask you this, and I agree. Let me ask you this though. When we talk about, for you, it probably would be great grandparents, for me, grandparents, and in parents and things like that who have had those civil struggles that were evident. Like right now, I can't go here. I'm not allowed to go to this place. And now we're in a situation where you pick up your phone and you just see anything that you want to see, however you want to see it. Do you feel as though our youth may be a little blinded or numb to some of the laws and civil engagement that's happening behind closed doors, and it keeps them detached? So when you mention like we need to focus on one thing, how do we even draw their attention that there is a thing? Because like you said, there are other things that we need to be aware and conscious of, but in your day-to-day living, if you don't see the fact that, hey, when I drive down the street, this is an area I'm not even supposed to be in, or those troubles. Hey, I can't go in here and get a hamburger and eat today because this sign says whites only. Those are things that our youth may not ever specifically experience smash in their face, but subliminally they are there. So how do you even raise that type of awareness to say, hey, I need y'all to focus real quick?
That's a very great question. I'm always going to be real. So when we have these conversations and we talk about these things, I always try to tell people that when we look at why does history repeat itself and why things happen, it's in part because the knowledge itself is lost. And what I try to tell people is that, yeah, the game has changed. Like when we talk about how we truly, how we truly integrated or how we assimilated. Now the attacks that's going on is not necessarily of physical, but it's more so of the mind. So again, when we talk about some of these systems that are at play that keep not only the youth, but also others oppressed in a way, it's mainly because of, again, they want you to feel that, hey, you have equality, that you have equity. But in hindsight, in regards, how much of it do you realize you have? Like, what is the true piece of the pie that you yourself have? And that's something that I feel like gets lost in translation, because what ends up happening is that, okay, we're going to do this through policies, we're going to do this through laws, we're going to do this through equity stakes and things of that nature. In regards, when if people don't understand this language that's being used, that's happening subliminally, you're not going to see it. And I think what's being lost from, again, the generations is that because it was right in their face, that's why you had so many people like rise up and do it. And I'm not saying that that's not happening currently. I think it's happening in a more moderate way. But when I'm looking at my peers, I'm also looking at the people coming behind me. I'm starting to see that because it's not in the face and it's more subliminal, I think that's what the issue is. However, I always try to tell people that we cannot wait till it's in our face, rather than that we have to do more prevention rather than intervention. When these issues are happening, what are things we can do to prevent rather than do this intervention and things of that nature? Because what we're starting to see is, again, a repeated cycle. So that's why I always try to tell my peers that when there's a will, there's a way, and we have to find the way, because the will is in our hearts. I truly believe people do care to have a better tomorrow, but they're trying to figure out how to utilize their voice in order to make the better tomorrow work for themselves and work for all of us. Because again, we're in a beloved community, just like MLK said.
Yes. As a future policymaker, like how do you want current leaders and future leaders to respond now to what we're seeing? So, for example, African Americans have always dealt with over policing. We'll just say it that way, in a nice political way. Over policing is always something. But now we're seeing, our Latin community having to deal with something very similar to the over policing. We've had to deal with, things that had sheets, people who had sheets. And it looks very similar to now people knocking on your door, pulling you out your house. There's a lot of similarities to what we have seen historically as African American people. So as a future policymaker, what would you like the narrative to be right now? And then where would you start with what you're seeing to say, hey, this is where we need to start making this change?
The narrative I would say that we should be focusing on is, again, and we can point to so many different socioeconomic issues, but I truly want the focus to be, how is it that we can bridge between equity and equality? That will always be at the forefront of anything. Whether we're talking about education, we're talking about housing, whether we're talking about transportation, whatever policy issue you think of, always comes down into, okay, this is the policy, and you make a great recommendation, but again, you got to look at the budget of the allocation of money that is going to go towards this said issue. So understanding when we talk about policy, we also have to talk about the budget. How is it that we can get more money? And also, how is it that we can have a very efficient, effective solution within the policy itself that will get to it? But what happens is it's the politics that messes up the policy, and then therefore it becomes a good or bad outcome in which people measure. And then that's what we start to see. Case in point, when we're talking about the ICE raid currently going on. What's going on is atrocity. Again, I always say, and MLK said it best, what happens to any one of us should be at the utmost concern of all of us. And when you look back, especially in the civil rights movement, and particularly in the US, you saw that, again, even though African Americans, we played a major big role, also other communities also came and helped us. People don't remember the Brown Berets. The Brown Berets was also an organization similar to Black Panther movement, and they helped out alongside us, as well as other Latino and Latinx organizations did too. And so when we talk about those things, I always try to say is that we all live in a collective. If they're doing this to our partner, our brothers and sisters, our Latinx and Lat community, what do you think they're going to do to us? What do you think they're going to do to other marginalized communities? What you're starting to see is more so a limit test. They're trying to figure out, this administration in particular is trying to figure out, how much can I do to said person, and I'm going to utilize this test to see what I can get away with to other people. And again, that is in a way because I'm going to, again, keep people distracted on these things so that I can do something subliminal to, again, affect another group of people.
Right.
And so when we talk about what's in your face, they're doing all these different things, whether it's ICE, whether whatever Trump is saying on Twitter, whatever some, like any of the department heads and administration are saying. They're doing these things because there's always a targeted agenda to, again, oppress the American people. They're not doing this. When I'm talking specifically, I think we've gone away from, again, how's it that we keep people first? And when I tell young leaders and I tell my peers of self, we are the leaders of tomorrow. And the way we have to go about these things is be strategic. We cannot just be out in the streets and protesting. Protesting is good, but we also have to understand what are the laws and policies that's in place, and how is it that we can get at the table and then also be the people at the table and try to fight for these things. Because again, the game was in the 1960s. Now, what is currently now is totally different. We have to go through things in an unconventional way rather than as conventional. So I always try to tell people is, again, be educated. Go get your education, college, if you get your master's, whatever, get your education. And then from there, find a way while you're doing your day-to-day job, but find a way that you can go and serve your community. And serving the community looks in so many different ways. What my calling is going to be different from what your calling is. If that's running for office, maybe that's just like serving in some political manner. Maybe that is you just like being a policymaker. Maybe that's just you just like, again, doing the day-to-day work that actually helps in the whole wheel of democracy itself. Again, at the end of the day, vote, but then also do something else because you're more than just your vote. And I don't think people understand that aspect itself, that when you voting is just one thing, but again, you got to do other things that also pushes the needle forward because again, politics is all local. It's all local. The national is great. State is cool. It is all local. If you're not taking part in your day-to-day local community, you yourself are taking yourself outside the process of how you can stand up and then make your voice heard from local, state, and national.
And so actually, you just pretty much took my next question, which was, what does political power look like in a climate that some people are fearful to even show up? What does political power look like right now? Because it's so strange. Like some people may think political power is what Trump is doing, but like you said, that's on a national level. So what does political power look like locally to make those changes and to have those conversations? What does that look like in a community where you said this community has it going the right way? They're doing it the right way. What does that look like politically?
This is what, for me, I feel like it looks like this politically. If I, for example, if I notice that there's a lot of potholes on my street, and I know I'm a resident of that community, resident of that city, and I've seen these same potholes for months and years at a time, again, you can run on that. You can run on that. I think oftentimes people, they get in office, they run on so many different, campaign issues that may work on a national, statewide, but what is your city and what is your district saying? I always try to tell people is that when we talk about city council meetings, show up to the city council meetings because you hear about what's going on in regards to like zoning. You hear about what's going on in different things and different commissioning boards and stuff like that. And you can also sit on some of these boards too if you get appointed by the mayor or the city board itself. So I always try to tell people that it's the small wins that get you to the bigger picture. So if that is focusing on, again, for example, the potholes, if that's, again, how is it I can get more money or subsidies for the school district? How can I go about, working on some of these zoning issues, like how I get affordable housing, things of that. It's always the small things that get to the bigger picture. So I always try to tell people is that find what works for you. Find what is your biggest issue. lobby and advocate for that and see where that gets you.
Mhm.
And again, not doing anything, that in itself is failure.
Mhm.
Versus if you tried and you didn't get what you wanted, but you got a little something, it's the incrementalism that gets you to the bigger picture. So
Yes.
again, I always try to tell people that political power is what you make of it. And power in itself is again, how can I get something or someone to do something that they normally wouldn't do? And that is
Mhm.
through, again, knowing your power and knowing where the vehicles of power itself to push what issue you want to have resolved. So I
Mhm.
always try, and I think oftentimes we make it this whole large concept. And again, I don't want people to feel like there is a barriers of power between where you are and where said person or said issue is, rather than like
Mhm.
we're actually the beginning, the middleman, and we can get to the end as well to
Yeah.
resolve that. So that's my
Yeah.
answer.
Great. Eh, I'm having a great time having a conversation with you. Once again, we got Devin Freeman, who's on our podcast today, and I enjoy it because it's a young mind, a young man with a young mind who is coming up with new, fresh ideas. And that leads me to my next question, which is: let's say you're in Congress, you're in Congress, and you're about to pass your first bill. What do you want your name on that directly impacts marginalized communities? So now you're sitting down, and it's time for you to get to work. What's the first thing that you want to put your name on to say, this is where I'm starting?
Honestly, it would be education and tech. So that's what
Mhm.
I call the bill, and in particularly K through 12 systems. What we're starting to see is you have such a large amount of kids reading behind their grade levels, whether that's reading or whether that's math. And in
Mhm.
particularly, if you look at black boys are starting to fall behind in regards to their counterparts
Mhm.
in the grade level of fourth grade. So again, when we're looking at that, and you also look at Latinos and other marginalized communities, we're starting to
Mhm.
see it's happening in elementary school. And so we're seeing that teachers are teaching our kids to the test rather than teaching them their fundamentals, because so many
Mhm.
other politics that's going on in the day-to-day workforce, which is not to themselves. Again, they have to play by the rules and passing kids along. And so again, what does that look like if we can create a bill that have more subsidies in nature that would allocate towards the K through 12 system and help kids reach their targeted grade levels, and not only test well, but also have the foundations and the
Mhm.
skills. And in
Mhm.
particularly, when I said tech, I would like that technology in that, because I truly believe we have to train kids early on in regards to how they get into the workforce after high school.
Mhm.
Of again, how's that we can teach them on AI? How can we help them understand when quantum computing comes, how to be a
Mhm.
part of that? And then also help them get into different trades and things like that. Because I believe when we can educate children, we're preparing them to have a better future.
Mhm.
And I truly think it starts early on rather than later on in life, so that you can give people the opportunity to learn. And then again, not only just to be a scholar, but also to be a better person holistically. So
Yes.
that's what my bill would be on, is on education and technology, because I truly think, again, you got to be educated, but you also have to have technology. We're starting to see how AI and all these other apps are happening.
Yep.
And again, people are trying to figure out how to utilize it. And again, I don't want our people, marginalized communities, to fall behind in regards to technologies, because again, if you look all the way back our roots, especially to Africa, again, we were able to make the pyramids. We were able to
Mhm.
make some of these different tools. We were able to be
Mhm.
kings and queens and stuff like that. And I truly believe we have to teach people again how to use some of these new technologies and help them be able to advance it for themselves. Because again, if we can get tech and education together, I believe we're also building the bridge between equity and equality. So
Dope. And there's a gentleman that we want to get you in contact with, because his name is Keenan Smith, and he is heavy into tech and heavy into AI, and he built a community called Black Singularity, and the goal is to teach as many minority folks, no matter what they need to know about moving into the world of AI, and not just Chat GPT, but literally using AI as a tool, because that's what's happening right in front of us. And he just like you said, he believes in education and making sure that we know this so that we don't get left behind. And so now my next question is going to be, you interned with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and the U.S. House from inside. Like, so you've heard some conversations. What's the conversations that are being had when it comes down to minority communities? And what's the conversations that you want to have? So you've heard things that maybe we haven't, and we know, with that being said, that there may be information that we don't know, and you're like, now it's coming, it's working, things are working, they're spinning. What would that be? And then what are some conversations that you're like, I wish this conversation was being had right now?
Nah, that's a great question. So when I worked in Congress, that was back in the summer of 2022, and so I worked for Congresswoman Alma Adams. She's a representative over the Charlotte area, and so the things that she's also known as the mother of HBCUs. So she also serves on the HBCU caucus, and then also on the maternal caucus as well. And when you look at those two caucuses, what she's doing with maternal health is phenomenal, but then also what she's doing with HBCUs and then helping push for having more infrastructure money, which she was able to pass in the large infrastructure bill that happened in 2023, was amazing. And that was a big push for the office to happen. And what I will say is this is in Congress, some of the things that were happening at the time and also is happening now, was that this slow revolving wheel in regards to the policy making itself. And I'm gonna talk about politics. I'm gonna talk about policy. I'm gonna talk about politics first. I think the perception around Congress, and in particular the Senate and the House, and when people view the news, is that, again, it is just so politicized, which the members themselves are, without question. But the people in the day-to-day office are not. They're mostly working on policy, and which during my time I got to see how the LA's legislative assistants, they were again working bipartisan and crafting bills, crafting these things. And again, it was from the influence from the members that they represent and work for. But I want to tell people that there is more bipartisanship that happens within the House and Senate than people realize. What happens is it's the members themselves that, again, becomes political because of different agendas that happen, stuff like that. But I'll say that on the political side. On the policy side, when we talk about things that are happening, things that are occurring, what I want people to be aware of, again, is back then when I was working in Congress, I was working on the education and working on health. But what's going now is there's so many different talks on like technology. I remember when I was back in, it was interesting seeing how it started. But I remember when I was in Congress, we were talking about how is it that we could turn like nuclear energy into like batteries. And then again, we're dealing with like the accessibility aspect of it and like having some of these hearings on that. But then now we're starting to see like this whole AI space and seeing like what that would look like. And then there being regulation within that aspect as well. And that's what I want people to focus on, is that, again, we talk about AI and also some of these like digital currencies, such as like coins, Bitcoin and things like that. These are very untapped markets that I don't think people realize that we should be in. And I'm not talking about just alternative investments, but I'm also talking about like how is it we can also understand financial literacy and then get into some of them stocks, get into some of them index funds and things like that. Because again, I think the next game is going to be about who has and who doesn't. And that is what the subliminal things I'm seeing in policy is going to be about. Again, especially with Republicans being in office and what they're doing, you're starting to see that this starting to become a whole, not just equality, but equity piece. And so many people are being cut away from that pie because of not being able to invest in some of these subsidies, in which you're starting to see some of these members in office are making so much money off of. So I try to tell people is, again, invest if you can, learn about financial literacy, and learn to see what are some of these companies doing, what are some of these, and when Trump talks about some of these tax incentives and things like that, again, who pockets, where, there's always that saying, follow the money. And when you follow the money, you start to see why some of these policies are being played. Because again, you have these political apparatus that's feeding into it. And then you always have these billionaires, things like that are, again, fueling this political agenda that's creating these disparities across the U.S. itself. So again, when we see what's happening at the White House, we know what's up.
Yeah.
You know what's up.
Once again, we got Devin Freeman with us. And like I said, please make sure if there are any questions or comments, when you go ahead and view this again, don't hesitate. Just go ahead and drop it in there and we can get it to him. So let's talk a little bit more. We got you're an author of children's books. We got that on deck. Let's talk about that a little bit. So your children's book is called Building a Better Block with Brandon. And it's about, kids becoming self-aware. So tell us, what was the inspiration behind this book? What caused you? Not too many people just jump in the game and say, I'm gonna make a children's book. So tell us a little bit about it.
So my book, Building a Better Block with Brandon, what it does, the reason I came up with this book in itself was because at the time at Central, I was doing a lot of talks in regards to at high schools and in college. Mm-hmm. But what I saw was I wasn't really having an opportunity to talk with elementary school students. And I started to see, it was like, what would that look like of me educating the youth in that way? Mm-hmm. And so and I did this going into my junior year. And I was like, okay, I see that the things I'm doing is great, but I'm not reaching another audience. And so I kind of bridge the gap between that. And what can I do to really do that? And one of the ideas I had was from a children's book, because I remember when I was working in Congress, mm-hmm. I met one of my roommates. He had a children's book, and I thought about that and made me think about back to that moment. And I was just like, let me get started on it. So I created 2 manuscripts. The first one was, again, with stories between me and my younger brother. But then I was like, I'm gonna wait. And then I was like, what's something that can really connect to like a broader audience? Mm-hmm. And then I started thinking about my experiences being a community organizer. And that's why I started out when we talked about myself. Mm-hmm. I started off with community organizing. Before I started doing the policy and then the politics, I started out with community organizing, because I always feel like, again, that's when you have a group of people together, the collective itself and the beloved community will always be at the forefront. So mm-hmm. keeping people first. And so it's neat because I did my second manuscript. I sent over to my author, not author, but illustrator, Trajan Baker. And I met him. We've been high school, friends all our lives. And so he went to Hampton University. He graduated, got his bachelor's and his master's in architectural engineering. And it was neat because I met him. This was going at the end of January. And I was like, we need to reconnect, man. I was about to go on a workout, because, people go off to school, we get busy. So I was seeing him in so long, we reconnected, and he was a great illustrator. I was like, hey, what would you do if you could make a children's book? And, would you illustrate with me? And he was like, yeah. So again, I sent him my manuscript, and it really connected because he has a very engineering landscape lens on things. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I was like, I think this will be suitable for you. So he got to work and he worked on it, and it was neat. We were able to release it going into the summer of 2024. And I did this while I was in Africa when the book got published on Amazon. And so Brandon is, and the reason I tell that story is because I want people to recognize that you can be young and do these things, mm-hmm. and you can create. You gotta be creative, because creativity is something that God's already put in you, but it's up to you to figure out what is your art and how is it that you want the world to accept your art in a sense. Yes. And it was neat because when I came up with Building a Better Block with Brandon in itself isn't a depiction of me, but rather what he is, what he can be, and what others are themselves. Mm-hmm. And what you see in Brandon is, again, you see so many things. You see a young Black boy who is going out in his community, and he's creating different community gardens. He's also building infrastructure in his community, and he's also working with local elected officials and helping push that. Mm-hmm. And that's some of the 3 things you start to see throughout the book is him taking ownership of his community, because again, even though we come from different blocks, we all experience similar issues. So mm-hmm. what does that look like building your own block? Yeah. And so that's why I called it Building a Better Block with Brandon, because I truly believe if you can take ownership of your community and you can build it up and you can help others find the way to build theirs up, we're unstoppable. And I felt
Absolutely.
like with the kids, what you asked earlier about, they feel unheard. They don't understand like the political process and things like that. I understand that too. I have nobody in my family who is political. I'm the
Okay.
one of the first people in my family to do politics, to do policy, things
Mhm.
like that. And again, I had those similar questions in high school. How can I get involved? And this book helps kids do that at an earlier age, that
Mhm.
you can do that isn't political in nature, but has similarities to the political process and how you can get involved. So teaching the subliminal skills of what
Mhm.
does that look like, of again seeing Black males taking and being in leadership positions and becoming leaders, and to be a leader without the position itself too. And then
Yeah.
also seeing too, you see in the book that he works with elected officials, and particularly the mayor of the town is a Black woman. So showing
Mhm.
that again, Black women, no matter the color, the race,
Yeah.
gender, you deserve to be in positions of power. And then third, you also see him work alongside different demographics that may or may not look like himself. And
Okay.
so it showcases that all those three types, archetypes, that hey, again, we can be the change agents. We
Mhm.
just have to help those see it for themselves too.
Yes. So I've held you, and this has been a great hour. We're at 56 minutes, but I have two more questions that I definitely want to close with before we get you out of here. The next one is like, what's the truth about our political systems in marginalized communities that you think most people are not ready to hear yet, but they need to? What are some truths that you just know, like, hey, y'all, we got to bite this bullet. We got to accept this so that we can move forward?
The truth is this: it works.
Mm-hmm.
When we come together, when we stand together, and we have ownership, and we know what we want, and we're strategic, it works.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I just graduated from NCCU, one of the
Mm-hmm.
best HBCUs, and not only the state but the nation. But
Mm-hmm.
I say that because I'm proud. I'm proud to be a HBCU grad, because again, I'm from Kernersville, like
Mm-hmm.
in Greensboro, not close to Greensboro, where A&T was. A&T was having one of the first sit-ins across the state and also the nation.
Yep.
And we talk about that. We talk about SNCC, all these other things, and we look how that was started within North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
another HBCU. People talk about these movements, and these movements started by young people at HBCUs.
Mm-hmm.
So again, knowing my history, that has strengthened me to do the work that God has called for me. And I always try to tell people is that these movements, these people that work alongside you and with you, again, we all have a part to play, because God has put something in us in order to do this work. And
Yes.
again, I don't even like calling this like marginalized, because again, by no means are we quote unquote marginalized, or are we diminished, or are we at a loss. If
Mm-hmm.
anything, we have so much to fight for, because we have so much to lose. And
Mm-hmm.
so again, when I see my ancestors, when I see the people in the past, MLK, Thurgood Marshall, and all the people that have fought for the things that we have today, I cannot sit in the mirror or just look at myself and think, why, if they did so much and they had so little, and me having so much, I have to do more with what I have now. And
Yes,
I
sir.
always call that to everybody, is that this is a call to action.
Yeah.
We cannot sit down. We cannot wait around. If we do, we'll be at a loss.
Yes.
The fight will be won on the other side. That's why we have to band together. If now, when. If not now, never. So
Yeah.
again, you gotta be all in. Gotta
Yes,
be all
sir.
in. Get in some good trouble. So I try to tell people
Yes, sir.
again, we are here. We are alive. We are fighting for the present, also for tomorrow. So that's the call, man. That is the
Yeah.
call.
Now, my last question to get you out, and you literally kind of talked about it now, about just getting active and let's get moving. But in this climate, if every person listening to this podcast, either live or in the future on the recorded session, what is one small civic action they can take this week to support those that are impacted by what we are seeing on the TV or on our internet, or just unjust policy? What is one small civic action they can take this week to just start the process of making a change?
I would say that one, we just had midterm elections, things like that. Again, I would look up the people who are elected what they plan to do. All too often, we help people get in office, but we don't actually hold them accountable.
Right.
We have to hold people accountable. Again, I love descriptive representation, but we have to have substantive representation.
Mm-hmm.
Look up the people who are just got elected into office. What will they plan to do once they're in office?
Yes.
And then start to see and have these track records of what they're doing, because that matters the most. And then what I'll say too is, again, donate to causes, to nonprofits and things like that, or even PACs that actually help with the issues that you care about. I don't think people recognize the whole aspects of advocacy and lobbying that some of these nonprofits and some of these PACs, what they do in regards to getting some of the points pushed. So that's why I always try to tell people is, again, donate the causes that matter, charitable causes, but also to PACs as well, of them pushing certain candidates that you want to see in office. But then in particularly, don't look into the people's records of who you just elected, and also people that are in office now, and see what they actually stand for. Are they truly for your interests, or are they against your interests?
Great answer. Now, my last thing is, how can we follow you on your journey and support you on your journey, and give out your social media if you like, so that we can continue to support you along all your endeavors?
I appreciate that, man. Again, I'm not too hard to find. My Instagram is Devin, DEV1N, and then dot Freeman. And then for Twitter, I just post a lot of motivational quotes. So like DF 336. And then I got LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is Devin, my name, and then my last name. So you can follow me there. And again, like prayer goes a long way. I always believe that God, he helps us understand the gifts that he has for us, and it's up to us to walk up them stairs and show it to the world. And I truly believe you got to walk by faith, not by sight, 2 Corinthians. So if anything, y'all just pray for me, because I'm always going to pray for y'all and our community and just the world, because again, we got so many things attacking us, but more than anything, we got to understand to give each other grace and also have empathy. And then more than anything, continue to have a heart, because in these desperate times, they do call for desperate measures.
Yes,
but
sir.
never be desperate in the heart, for the Lord, your Father, knows he has better plans for you. He has better plans for this earth and for this world. So never give up the faith, never give up the hope, because again, that is what the world wants you to forget, because you yourself is the light. So walk in that path of light.
And there's no better way to close the show. For those who are listening live, please make sure if you're driving or something, get home safely. And if you're watching this live right now, just go ahead and cut it off, because that's how we're going to end it today. So I thank you, Mr. Freeman, for being a part of TDS Radio, and hopefully you'll come back again.
For sure. Always welcome, man. And I enjoyed tonight, for real.
Appreciate you. Thank you very much. Y'all be safe, and good night.
See you.
Uh-oh. There it is. There. Oh, no. What happened to my outro? The outro didn't play, y'all. I don't know why. Good night.